Welcome.
Freethinker Radio.
Yeah.
90.1 KPFT Houston. My name is Derrick Bros. I'm here with
Micah.
And we got
Johnny
in the house. Yes, this is another episode of Freethinker Radio. We are here every Friday from 3 to 4 p.m., bringing you uncensored news beyond the left, right, beyond the mainstream, local events, music from all over Houston and from beyond. Lots of exciting things going on. So let's just dive right into it, guys.
We got some events. What you were talking about a forum.
I went to one thing last night that it was cool. I'll tell you guys about that, and then a couple of things I know are coming up. And I went to this. We talked about this last week. The Cannabis Reform of Houston had a meeting last night. It was their social gathering meeting.
Nice. So how'd that go? What kind of environment was it?
It was at the old Midtown Bar and Grill. You know, when people ever wonder why we mention that place a lot.
A lot of stuff's happening there.
A lot of stuff does happen there, but also the owners are very friendly to the community, specifically, I'd say the activist community, and they are a part of the community. So they're really open to people hosting music events and activist meetings and all kinds of things you can think of.
And eating their food sometimes.
And eating their food. They are a 24-hour restaurant as well. They're a cool little spot. So, yeah, they show some love to everybody here. But the Cannabis Reform of Houston was hosting their social meeting there last night, and it was pretty cool.
What did they talk about?
They were talking about their sort of like the wrap up of the Texas legislature recently and the bills that passed, like the hemp bill and the pluses and the minuses of that.
And I know we're going to get into that further in the show, but that's good that there's a local community getting into that.
There was about 40 people there, dude, and definitely like it was cool because these people are excited, they're pumped, they're like everybody's got different goals. Some people are calling for legalization, others are calling for decriminalization. I heard something about a plan called Hemp Houston that was kind of interesting. And, you know, these things are being put out there. So if you're interested, check out Cannabis Reform of Houston. There is a Facebook group and a page, I think, for those who want to get plugged in and check that out.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was there last night, and just to mention something that's coming up.
You said it had a decent turnout, so that's kind of good, too, to know that there's people that are concerned about issue, but also they're coming out.
Especially in the summer.
In numbers like that.
I was told at the beginning there was like a concern there wouldn't really be very many people there because it was the summer and people are kind of out of town, but they had a really good turnout. And lots of cannabis entrepreneurs and people who are medicinally concerned and people who are,
that's good to hear.
There's so much coming together.
Because if you don't go to one of these things, you might think, oh, it's just going to be a bunch of potheads or something. But it sounds like you were saying,
really diverse crowd for sure.
Business people looking into like the
I met a nurse from the Rosenberg area, originally from Boston, who is a cannabis nurse, specifically deals with cannabis nursing and, trying to get some information on how she can do what she does, while it's in this legal limbo and without getting herself in any kind of trouble. So lots of interesting people. I definitely recommend people checking out Cannabis Reform of Houston. I got a couple of other events coming up, but what did you do this week, Micah?
I got some events I was going to talk about that were coming up.
What did you do?
I did. I was on the HD side at radio, and I did some other things, and I worked real hard for Visionary Noise, and we got albums out and digital releases online that you can buy direct from us rather than having to go to iTunes. So I think that's kind of cool.
I'm going to have to check that out.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what I do. I've been working, but I was over here on HD like we are every week on both sides of your weekend, and I hope you do tune in to us Monday. Call and tell us about what you had going on. But I did have a couple of events that I thought were pretty interesting coming up on the short term. K Reno, I know we're broadcasting down there in Galveston, and if you're hearing our voice, K Reno will be down there at 18th Street Bar and Grill tomorrow at 7. I don't know exactly what time he'll be there, but
and K Reno also has a show on KPFT too.
Exactamente. So I definitely wanted to get the word out about that. Long time, I guess you could call him a supporter, a mutual friend. I mean, he's talked about some ideas that we also have talked about. He's come through and played different events, and like you said, he's also here on
he's
KPFT.
Been in the rap game in Houston for decades.
And also, I guess I usually don't talk about many shows over at White Oak, but Oceans of Slumber will be there tomorrow night too.
Cool.
So, along with Warlung.
What about you, Johnny? What did you have going on this week, or what do you got coming up?
We threw a show at the House of Jay on Friday night, and we kind of threw it together last minute, but it worked out. Some kids from California came through and played. So that was pretty fun. And then I went up to Dallas and actually played a house show over there as well.
Nice.
Yeah. The Mosquitoes were killer, but it was a really good time.
Now, is the Mosquitoes a band, or do you mean the literal mosquitoes?
No. I don't think I would go see a band called the Mosquitoes just for my
Sounds like they'd be very buzzing.
Yeah. The California kids said the Houston Mosquitoes were, in fact, the worst, though. So if anyone's wondering if mosquitoes are worse in Texas or
I've
California.
seen worse in Corpus Christi.
Oh, they latch on there.
Dude. Yeah. Well,
all right, we were just talking about Fusca, and we're going to play them later, July 26th at Rudyard's. That's next Friday.
Yeah,
Cool.
they're playing this weekend too. They play Darwin's with Metanoia tomorrow. And that's
nice.
a free
that's
show.
A good lineup, too.
Yeah, that's a free show.
tomorrow night.
And that's right.
Darwin's free
Where's
show.
that at? That's right over there at Washington, more or less, and Waugh.
Here in the downtown area?
Washington. There's not too many venue spots out there, but that's like a really good one that a lot of people like, and they have pool and drinks.
Well, I want to throw out a couple more events before we move on to local news. Just anybody who's interested, tomorrow morning, I do know there will be a volunteer bayou cleanup with the Buffalo Bayou Partnership. Anybody's welcome to come. It's from 8:30 to 11:30. Anybody is welcome to come. It's like going to be a bunch of groups of people, and you meet them at the Wortham Visitor Center, which is off Sabine Street. I think it's 105 Sabine Street, but if you can look it up and find it, it'll be 8:30 a.m. tomorrow, Saturday, till 11:30 a.m., and you can just come help clean up the bayou that runs through downtown, runs through, the city. That's 8:30 to 11:30.
Nice.
And that's all I got. So what's going on locally, Mike? I know
we should get into some news, and we
got
kind
a
of
crazy story again.
Well, there's always a crazy story, and I would like there not to be, so that we could maybe talk about other stuff. But it turns out, and I think one of the reasons we're going to talk about this is, thank goodness it's not another person being shot.
Well, before you say that, Micah, remember, guys, if you're listening, you can call in to share your thoughts on any of the things we covering, the stories we're about to do. If you got events, 713-526-5738. Just want to throw that out there, 713-526-5738. Light up the phone lines and tell us your thoughts. What is this story all about, Micah?
It's no big deal, right? It's the stuff you'd expect to see. Houston police officer arrested during an undercover prostitution sting.
What do you mean expect to see?
I don't know. Maybe I sound a little bit jaded. It's just a generic one, just a generic sort of like one rule for everyone else except those that, are in a certain group. And then, wait a minute, why is prostitution illegal? And here's this thing where a Houston police officer who's not supposed to engage in soliciting prostitution is arrested in Fort Bend County for it. I'm not even going to name his name because it's not really about all that. But it's just, look, it's this whole idea of, we have to keep these things out there because, people would say, oh, you're crazy saying, why is prostitution illegal, right? People would give me a big hard time over that.
Isn't the law supposed to follow my moral beliefs?
Yeah, for sure. Ha! Yeah, but then there's the whole thing about we always think that police don't make mistakes. We don't think that, of course, because we see that oftentimes, well, maybe not oftentimes, but they have enough consequence when they do. As in the total raid, for instance. They have enough consequence when they do make mistakes that they get extra attention. We could even say that because it's a powerful mistake, to take someone's life. But I feel like, I'm not surprised because human beings are human beings, and a lot of human beings would engage in, this sort of interaction, prostitution, whatever you want to say,
But is it more about that this is an officer on duty that has some sort of expectations, that he's a position of authority?
Yeah, I think it's something like that.
Like more than saying like, oh, you shouldn't be able to pay another adult for consensual sex if if that's what the case was. But it's an officer. And I think that are we just going on the officer's word alone, or like is there anything about like the woman or the man or whoever the prostitute was?
It was a sting. He tried to.
I don't want to assume the gender of the prostitute.
You could say it was like this if you want to deepen it, because here we go. It says that he was arrested after he allegedly tried. So he's still innocent until proven guilty. Tried to solicit sex during an undercover prostitution sting. And the other reason to think about, like, when police do things like this or are in the headlines for like this is, for instance, the total raid. We have so many unanswered questions about why that happened. What could have it happened for? You don't even know that this officer may have some information that he's then being set up for this,
It's just hard to trust anything that, that like, unfortunately, we were talking about that.
And I say it's not hard to believe, and it's the usual thing, and it's not shocking because this is pretty commonplace around here. We're reading things like this on the regular.
Also, wouldn't the cops know where to find all of the prostitutes in the first place? Your average Joe might not know which massage parlor to walk into.
Yeah.
Cop had some inside knowledge.
Well, he knew down in Fort Bend if this is really the case,
I got another story that I want to get into for a few moments because I think it relates. Well, as I mentioned, I was at the Cannabis Reform of Houston meeting last night, and there was some discussion on recent bills. And we've talked about how here in Harris County, which is the county that Houston is located in, the second biggest county in the country, is one of the first, well, I think the first place in Texas to have any type of slight diversion. It's not, decriminalization. We don't have complete decriminalization in this city. We have what they call a diversion program.
Less pain.
Which means that, it's less pain. You got to pay $150 and then take a class, which I think is still silly, but that's, you're not going to jail, basically. So we have that, and now recently Kim Ogg, the DA, said that after a Texas law was passed that basically legalized hemp, which according to the government, even though cannabis and hemp are there's different aspects of the same plant, to them it becomes marijuana once it passes 0.3 THC. So if it's below that, it's considered non-psychoactive and it's considered to be hemp. So that basically means, since hemp is legal in Texas, that weed that is 0.3 or less of THC is legal. And the DA has also said they're only going to accept charges here in the city of Houston if cops come with paperwork proving that the THC content is higher than 0.3%, because they're like saying, hey, well, if you can't prove it, then we're not going to accept it. Most cops aren't going to want to go to the extra effort. Up in Montgomery County North, the DA over there and the police chief said, yeah, we'll go to the extra effort. They're actually doing it. They will drug test your stuff and take you in and this and that. So then we've got counties, and apparently this is happening in Dallas too, counties that are starting to say, and cities, this is one of the ideas of maybe what we could do in Houston, are starting to say, we're going to sort of self-nullify these laws. And maybe the feds say it's illegal still that you have weed or smoke weed or possess weed or use it for medicine or whatever. Maybe the state still says that. But on a local level, we find our own reasons, whether that is because we think it's immoral. In this case, they say it's saving money and the jails are dirty and overcrowded and disease-filled, so there's no reason to lock up potheads here in the city. Whatever reason they're taking, the point is that they're starting to move away from criminalizing cannabis. And as that's going on, we just had a report that Texas Governor Greg Abbott urges Texas district attorneys not to drop misdemeanor cannabis possession cases. And he's telling state, district, and county attorneys that they should continue to enforce Texas laws. And the Dallas County DA says he won't prosecute without evidence. Dallas County District Attorney John Crusat fired back at Texas Governor Greg Abbott Thursday, saying he won't prosecute people without evidence of their guilt, after the governor sent a letter to all Texas district and county attorneys earlier in the day asking them to, quote, uphold their oath and faithfully execute the law when it comes to prosecuting cannabis cases. And I'm guessing when he says uphold their oath, he probably means oath to the Constitution, right? I mean, wouldn't you think, Micah? But I don't understand where the Constitution says anything about, like, telling people what they can... wasn't the Constitution written on hemp?
Yeah.
So I don't know what he's talking about there. But then the letter was signed by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, Texas Speaker Dennis Bonnen, and Attorney General Ken Paxton. So all the leading authorities of the state are basically saying, like, you still need to prosecute weed.
Is it really that big of a problem, though? Like, are these violent criminals?
Well, they're recognizing that
to car crashes. Like, I don't understand why they're so bothered by it.
I think they're just recognizing that they're losing power. That if a county, the biggest county in the state,
they're not telling people not to smoke weed anymore. They're having to reach out to the DAs.
They're having to tell their own people, like, yo,
hey,
what are y'all doing?
Hey, you're supposed to be on our side, hating freedom or whatever.
This letter is supposed to be a reminder. This is what they said. Marijuana has not been decriminalized in Texas, and these actions demonstrate a misunderstanding of how HB 1325 works. That's the recent hemp bill. The power to change the law is legislative and rests with the Texas legislature under the Texas Constitution. Since HB 1325 did not repeal the marijuana laws of Texas, as judicial branch members, you should continue to enforce those laws by, quote, faithfully executing the duties of the office of the DEA or county attorney or state of Texas, and to the best of your ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and the state.
Federal government sent this out to some state governments, like in Colorado and all that stuff, and told them, oh, by the way, we know you're making like billions or millions of dollars or whatever, and like all your people haven't revolted or turned into dissidents and losers ever since you made it legal, but you've got to come back together with this federal government idea of it being illegal, because that's really what we're talking about, the same level stuff, as from the federal government to the state governments, from the state governments down to these DAs. So Colorado ain't changing. Oregon isn't changing.
I mean,
California isn't changing.
It's over. I think it's over half the states. It's legalized now.
It's getting to that point.
At least medicinally.
Dude,
So Kim Ogg, the only change I think you need to make probably is stop charging people $150 and making them take a class. Maybe give them an online class where they can learn how to be more efficient with their consumption or whatever.
I think this is a really big thing, though, because
I'll tell you how to be efficient.
If you look at this story, it says that since this HB 1325 passed with the hemp law, right? Because of that, the Harris County DA, the Dallas County DA, Tarrant County DA, Denton County, so at least 4 big counties, Behar County, Harris, others have said we're not going to prosecute now because they're basically saying unless the cops can come with proving that the weed is above or below the level, they won't accept it. And the cops only have tools that can tell whether or not there's THC or not how much how much there is. So they basically can't do anything. So in a way that they're like sort of nullifying the law, and then the DA or the governor's freaking out saying like, yo, you guys don't have the power to change the law. You're supposed to enforce it. But this is a kind of a cool indirect way to push towards decriminalization. So just across the state of Texas, that means in the last few weeks, 6 different counties have basically said they're not going to prosecute people for misdemeanor weed cases.
Yeah, so if you do get caught up, make sure you get a lawyer and
well, tell them right away.
Yeah, tell them.
Well, this is the thing is, theoretically, you shouldn't even be arrested because if you're in Harris County, in order for them to arrest you, they got to call the DA and say, hey, I pulled somebody over and we got them on some weed charges, and if they're like, okay, you got evidence, cool, go, everything's good, the DA approves it and they can arrest you because the DA has decided they will seek charges on you. But if the DA is like, well, do you have this THC amount in it? And the cop's like, no, okay, well, sorry, we're not going to take those charges.
So what would you recommend somebody say to an officer?
To tell them that they have to test it. I mean, yeah, well, if you're going to speak to them at all, like tell them that they have to test it to be able to take you in. And they'll know this, like in Harris County at least. But like I said, some other counties are being almost vindictive about it and they want to go to the extra effort. They're like, no, we're not letting these potheads get away. Not in our county. But I think it's showing the changing tide that is coming to Texas, even though people might think that never would happen in Texas. Do
you think we could take a step into a different subject real quick?
Yeah.
Oh,
sure,
right.
Micah.
The reason I want to go there is because we're at 5:20 and we got a lot of stuff to cover. And there was an aspect of the story that I first got into that I didn't think I was able to cover. So let's go kind of back into the idea of police officers that are violating the law and what that might mean. Okay. Because there's a lot of things like human trafficking, right? I mean, these people are operating somehow and moving people as human slaves, more or less, and able to do this. So they probably have a few connects. I don't know. But that's one thing to think about. But also one thing I will say is that one that I just spoke about that was arrested Tuesday that made the news for this week, that individual is a 22-year veteran of the force. So this isn't just like some new rookie cop that didn't know prostitution was illegal in the club he played in. But I did want to mention that. Also, it's interesting because the Houston Police Union, since they say they're not going to help him because the offense did not involve his official duties. So that's something to look out for in the future if they're defending cops that are where it's not in their official duties. Why would they do that for some and not for others? But that Joe Gamaldi declined any further comment. And also, this is the 6th HPD police officer in the last 3 years busted for allegedly soliciting sex. So that's something to think about as well. The numbers are starting to climb. And there's another interesting one that occurred is, let's see, where was this one? I'm sorry, it's taking me a moment. They fired this other officer after the Harris County homicide investigators found texts from him to a murdered woman who had a history of prostitution. So they found over 690 texts between this one officer and a murdered woman, including one in which he asked if he could get a discount because he was a first responder. And so they actually gave him a discount from their $300 hourly rate to a $100 rate. But I think that's kind of interesting when you think about it, this whole thing about an individual officer being fired because he has texts between him and a woman that was murdered who had a history of prostitution. That's a really difficult one in itself. But I think what it illustrates is that there's some concern that officers could be impugned by the, the illegal operations that surround prostitution, human trafficking, these sort of things. So I think that's the importance, or at least one of the things to think about with this story. I don't know, man.
Well, I mean, I think I've said it before here on the show that a couple years ago, whenever the Super Bowl was here in Houston, I did a story on human trafficking in Houston, and I had a source for the story that was a local activist of sorts, you could say, who spends her time rescuing young boys and girls off the streets of Houston, and sometimes from the clutches of would-be traffickers and pimps and things like that. And she's provided some fair, I would say some fairly reasonable evidence that she's had instances where HPD has turned a blind eye, or not specific officers that she's tried to report information to about trafficking. She's had them kind of turn turn a blind eye to some of that activity. Now, I'm not going to say specific officers and things of that sort, but I think my point here is that, yeah, corruption is at the highest levels. And this is one of the things I heard people talking about last night at Cannabis Reform of Houston, is that a lot of people are focused so much on the national level. What's Trump up to? What's CNN talking about? What's all that? And they don't realize and see their own, their own propaganda and their own control and corruption in their own backyard, like in your own city, So I think it's pretty interesting and important for us to take a look at what's going on here. So what was that story you just showed me, Micah? Is that corruption?
I was just going to hit the headline on it because I don't think we need to go too deep. It might not be surprising, but is this Joe Grimaldi and Nope. Yep, there's Joe Grimaldi and Sylvester Turner shaking hands because the Houston Police Officer Union has endorsed no one other than Sylvester Turner.
Wait, this is Joe Grimaldi, the one who, after the Tuttles were killed in that raid, said like he was going to go after activists who were doing something about looking up cops or talking about cops.
He's got our numbers, man.
Oh, yeah.
713-526-5738.
We'd love to have
if you
Joe
talk
Grimaldi
about or question, So, and now the Tuttle raid, thousands of cases have come into question on it. So I think it's probably a good idea that someone question it. Whether it sounds like those DAs, he probably has their number too.
Well, one thing I do want to mention, and I can't spill the beans yet, but we'll tell you more about this on next week's show. And you'll definitely want to listen to Freethinker Radio on Monday because we will be able to spill some beans on Monday. But right now it's a little early. But we had Huai, who came on before. He's with We the People Organize. He's the main, they're the main group that's behind pushing for more clarity and transparency related to what happened to the Tuttles. And they basically have organized a bit. They're working with the family, they're working with the lawyers, and there's supposed to be some new information coming soon. That's really all I can say. We mentioned before when we talked to Hoy, he said there would be a press conference and a plan for a march. So that's all we can say as far as the details. But next week, for sure, listen to Freethinker Radio, Monday and Friday if you can.
Yes.
Mondays from 4 to 6 on the HD2 dial at kpft.org/listen. And then Friday right here, because if you care about people being murdered by the Houston police, and then the police lying about it, there being some level of cover-up that we're still trying to get to the bottom of it, and you care about getting rid of things like no-knock raids, or just, this is also a consequence of the drug war because they were supposedly using drugs, and so they thought they needed to come in like a SWAT team.
They were supposedly selling heroin.
Supposedly, allegedly, all these kinds of things.
You can't do a raid just because someone's using drugs.
Yeah, you got to get them for selling black tar heroin.
Yeah.
And so because of that, 2 people are dead and their dog's dead and 4 officers were wounded. We don't know the truth about it. So, like I said, next week we'll have more information. There will be a press conference. There will be a planned march. Not going to give away details of location and time yet because some people out there try to mess things up sometimes. So we'll wait till they give us the go-ahead till next week. So stay tuned.
So you think we're at the music time, man?
Yeah, it's time for our music break, guys. This is the part where we play a few songs. You're listening to Freethinker Radio. We're going to play some local good music here. Johnny, what do we got coming up? Anything you can tell us?
Oh, yeah. We got some of Nova Skyway. This is
Skyway.
kind of interesting one, The Missionary. The Missionary, is that? No, The Machinist. That's it. Sorry, The Machinist. So,
sweet.
Should be a good one.
Check that out. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right. Welcome back to Free Thinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. What was that, Micah? Who did we just jam? We had two songs.
That was a Nova Skyway. Yeah, we didn't expect that one, but we were happy to be here. I got some news to get out to y'all, and I really wanted to talk about this, and we're going to get deeper into some of these stories. But in the national front, in Chicago, it turns out that a 9-member board of the police, investigation board found that there's officers that basically alleged they covered up a fatal police shooting of Laquan McDonald. He was a 17-year-old, and in order to justify the actions of Officer Jason Van Dyke of shooting the 16 times, McDonald, the child that was shot, was high on PCP when he refused police commands to drop the knife while he was walking away from him. So they shot him 16 times, and the 9-member board, surprisingly, found out that they exaggerated the threat that he posed and fired 4 Chicago cops. So maybe the tide is turning.
And it took years to get to that point.
It usually does.
That result.
A couple other real ones and important ones. Then we'll get into more depth on the international front. Here, I think this is something we do need to mention. The war machine is sending 500 troops to Saudi Arabia as part of its 1,000-plus troop deployment into the Middle East.
Wait, Saudi Arabia, that's one of the U.S. allies, right?
That's right.
That's the one that beheads people still and that crucifies people for punishment, right?
Yeah, why wouldn't a freedom-loving country be friends with people like that?
Okay, cool. Just checking.
Yeah. Just checking. But they got oil. Tensions with Iran. That's why they're sending them there, allegedly. And according to sources, troops are expected to go to the Prince Sultan Air Base, which lies in the desert east of Saudi's capital of Riyadh. I'm sure I'm mutilating some words here. Troops and support staff are already on the base to make preparations for, like this one, quote, a Patriot missile defense battery, along with, quote, runway and airfield improvements. Congress has not yet been formally informed of the deployment. I mean, they're not told about things that happen. I mean, it did say in the Constitution something about Congress declaring war, but I guess, you don't even have to tell them. So it turns out that Congress has not yet been formally informed of the deployment, but one source said that lawmakers were given a heads up. Guess what? An announcement is expected later this week. Pentagon declined to comment on the matter, and Saudis have not made any announcements about U.S. troop deployment either. So I got one more, and then I'm going to just step back for a minute. A court in Ecuador has upheld a ruling that prevents the government from selling land in the Amazon rainforest to oil companies, a move activists call a historic win for the Waorani indigenous tribe living there. So things going on all around the world, it turns out.
Yeah, I'll jump into one real quick here. Just for everybody to know, since Micah just mentioned one indigenous story, there has been a struggle going on in Hawaii that some of you may be aware of, where on Mauna Kea, which is a sacred mountain to the Hawaiian people, there's also a telescope, plans for a telescope. Hawaii telescope operators abandoned millions of dollars worth of instrumentation and evacuate employees amid Mauna Kea protests. So it's being compared by some folks in, whether you call it Standing Rock or any other indigenous struggle, something of that sort, where people are coming from all over to support, and native protectors of the land are out there. And there are, of course, some struggles and back and forth with the police, the Hawaiian National Guard, and, of course, the protectors. They've been engaged in a standoff since Monday's scheduled start of construction this past week. And on Wednesday, there were 33 arrests during a sit-in on Mauna Kea Access Road. So some of the workers were told to leave apparently for their safety, is what they said. Mauna Kea, of course, is the highest peak in Hawaii at nearly 14,000 feet and was chosen as the site for the telescope in 2009 because of its elevation and its lack of light pollution. But it's been protested pretty much since that time, and people have been trying to resist that because of, again, they have a spiritual connection to that land and say that is a sacred site to them. So just a shout out to those who are out there fighting for the causes they believe in. And also I want to throw a shout out to my brother, Mike Bros, who I think is tuned in, listening. Mike, if you're at work or wherever you're at, appreciate what you do and all you do for your family, and thanks for tuning in. But Micah, unless you got something else, I was going to get into my main story here. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, let's get into that. That's kind of interesting one, and then we'll take some calls.
Definitely want to take your phone calls. Johnny's on the phone right now with somebody. Looks like he's having a good time. 713-526-5738. The call lines are open, and especially with this story, we want to hear your thoughts. July 17th, 2019, Germany introducing mandatory measles vaccination for kids. This is being reported by the Associated Press. The German government is proposing a measure to make measles vaccinations mandatory for children and employees of kindergartens and schools. Chancellor Angela Merkel's cabinet approved the plan Wednesday, noting the number of measles infections has risen significantly in recent years. Now lawmakers in Parliament are expected to approve the law. In the phased-in program beginning in March, parents of school-aged children, starting at kindergarten, will have to provide proof of vaccination. Non-compliance means children will be refused admittance to kindergarten and their parents possibly fined. Parents of older students will be fined up to 2,500 euros, which is the equivalent of $2,803. The German news agency DPA reports that while 543 cases of measles were registered in Germany last year, 543, there have been more than 400 cases this year. And obviously this is setting off a heated debate that has continued. We've been talking about this for months now, the various vaccine arguments and discussions, and we were talking about how places like California have also tried to pursue these kind of paths and taking away people's exemptions, which, as we've argued, I think, Mike, I would say correctly, the idea is that, you have a personal exemption to vaccines. That's pretty much what they all are, because whether it's for your religion, for your, personal reasons, or because your health reasons, it's your personal reason. You're going to have to hold me down to violate my rights. So, and I think a lot of people feel that way. I've been contacted through our show, and, we have a lot of people call in here people who feel very strongly about this issue that, like, look, I'm not going to forcibly vaccinate. There's a lot of opinions, right? People call someone like us just even having this conversation. We might get called anti-vaxxers. And if somebody call in and tell me, what does an anti-vaxxer really mean? Because does that mean just somebody who has questions, or somebody that is like, hey, maybe we should slow the schedule down, or somebody who just says, I want freedom?
I think it's a really hardliner word that people use that are radical supporters, almost fervent supporters of vaccines.
Well, it's like state worshipers. These are like medical worshipers.
It's weird because you're not an anti-vaxxer just because you ask questions about vaccines. I've got vaccines. I've used vaccines, I'm not telling people not to get vaccines. I think people should only get vaccines if they want to. Does that make you an anti-vaxxer? It doesn't sound like it's necessarily like against vaccines. But it's amazing. So that's why I think the whole term anti-vaxxer, it's almost like a term to label something to group one, like diverse people for many different reasons that may have different questions. Not even all the questions are the same. Obviously the medical freedom question is different than the health question. So it's taking everybody and putting them into one clump in order to, denigrate and control.
So if you're the kind of person that uses the term anti-vaxxer in your regular parlance or in social media discussions, please call in to 713-526-5738 for a healthy discussion on how you define that term. And many of you call in, because I'm sure we'll get different definitions, because it's a word, like Micah said, that's kind of a radical term, but it's becoming normalized. So anybody who says, hey, could I change my child's vaccination schedule? They could be an anti-vaxxer. Somebody who says, oh, hey, I just prefer freedom. That's an anti-vaxxer. Somebody who says, hey, have you ever heard of the CDC whistleblower? That's an anti-vaxxer.
Have you ever heard of the vaccine
What if I just don't want one vaccine?
Yeah, or if you just want one, but you're fine with the other, you're an anti-vaxxer. It's just a term that's being thrown around. And the reason we're having this conversation and spending this time, some will say it's a silly stance to take. But when you have a whole country like Germany and then other states in the United States considering and counties in New York, doing mandatory vaccination orders where parents are fined. And we've asked this question before. What is going to be the end result of that fining? Okay, so you don't pay the first $1,000. Then you get fined another $1,000. Eventually, they're going to come try to collect that one way or the other. What, are they going to garnish your wages? Are they going to come actually lock you up? Or are they going to forcibly
garnish
hold you down?
your wages? They're forcibly taking your wages.
Yeah, they're taking from you. They're taking from your livelihood that you can't, that's your time, your energy. So where does this go? That's what I'm trying to get people to think about is like, okay, we can have discussions if you want to get into the health. I'm focused more on the sort of freedom aspect. And I mean, I'm sure there are definitely some Germans who are up in arms about this new law passing, saying that it's mandatory. So in case you didn't hear, Johnny, it's mandatory for all kids beginning at kindergarten. If they don't have all the proper vaccines, whatever those are, then they can't attend school. And then the parent also gets a fine, the equivalent of like $2,100 US. And that's just the first fine. And I think there's more fines that come after that, and who knows where they step it up.
What was the precursor to this? That's kind of what I want to know.
Of course, the measles.
But what was it actually a severe outbreak to the point where they're like, wow, our population's
there was some
threatened.
stats. It said something like they had 500 last year. This year they've already got more than that, so they're on par to surpass last year's rate, which is like, numbers fluctuate. I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but obviously, like, it's hard to just say, okay, well, one year we jumped to this. But that's what the news is putting out there, is that is a measles outbreak going on, like, widely, and that, it's something that people should fear. I'm not denying that there are cases of measles. Nobody freak out and call in and say that. But again, if you use the term anti-vaxxer and you have, what you have something to say about that, please call in. I do think we got somebody on the line. The number though is 713-526-5738. We're with you for another 15 minutes or so, and we might have another 2 stories to cover, but if you'd like to call in, oh, cool, we got another call, so let's keep them going. Who do we got on the line, Johnny? Who's there?
Hello?
Hey, can you hear us? How are you doing?
I barely can hear. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. What's on your mind?
Okay, what's on my mind is, hold on a minute. What's on my mind is I'm all for any law right now that they pass about these vaccines, because in my opinion, given a chance for most people and young people nowadays to act silly and do just silly stuff, they will do it. We all went through getting vaccinated and nothing happened to us. There's nothing happened to their kids. So for a religious excuse, no, they shouldn't have them at all.
So people shouldn't have the freedom to decide how they want to medicate themselves?
Just like everybody else. All protections that they can give you. Polio got eradicated. We're not trying to bring back measles and polio. It's a vaccine for it. They need to get it.
So, sir, do you think that people don't have the right to choose how to medicate themselves?
No. That's not medication. That's a vaccine. That's protection.
Isn't vaccine medication?
No. Protection from you against me, and me from you against you.
Okay, so shouldn't people have the right?
That is protection.
Shouldn't people have the right to choose how they protect themselves?
It's not a medicine. It is protection. I'm not going to even talk about medicine. This is what I'm trying to get you to understand. It's protecting me. It's protecting you. We cannot just decide that I'm not going to protect anybody. I don't want to protect anybody because I don't want my little baby to get a shot. That's just the court. That's just ridiculous. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Use a religion.
Sir, thank you for that call. So what I want to say back to you before we move on to the next call is, whether you call it protection, medication, whatever, I mean, vaccines come from the medical industry. They are a form of medicine. You can say it's preventative medicine, but it's still medicine. And at the end of the day, people deserve and have that creator-given, God-given, Constitution-given, whatever you need, freedom, right, to decide how they medicate themselves and what they put in their bodies, their body, their choice. So totally disagree with you there, but let's go to the next caller.
Hey, you guys hear me?
Yeah,
how are you?
What's on your mind?
How are you doing today?
Doing good. Glad to hear you today.
2 things, just in response to the last caller. I mean, if you have a vaccine, you're protected, am I right?
That's the argument, right? Isn't that the point of getting the vaccine?
Right. So why would you care if anybody else gets a vaccine or not?
Well, it's because of this herd immunity idea. That's what the last caller was talking about it, and have you researched that at all? Are you familiar with that concept?
Herd immunity?
Yeah, that there has to be a certain amount of, this is what we're told, that there has to be a certain amount of the population that gets the vaccine in order for it to be accurate, which is kind of weird to me. They're saying, like, okay, so your vaccine will only work if everybody else also gets it.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense about how vaccines have worked historically either.
No, so I mean, that's one point I'm going to make. Another one is that I'm 60 years old, and I had the measles, I had the mumps, I had the chicken pox. So did everybody in my family, So when you guys were talking about, geez, is there some? Yeah, I'm anti putting anything in your arm because I don't trust the government. Okay, but even if you guys are like, well, hey, we should pick and choose, I'm cool with that because hey, measles, mumps, and chicken pox historically don't kill. I mean, there's an exception to the rule, but I'm proof of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, definitely.
Now here's the last question. I'm going to hang up. Okay. But you guys had a little bit of a spot 50 years ago, as I recall. We watched on TV, somebody landed on the moon, okay? There's 2 or 3 in that booth there. Yes or no, did we go? Did we really go, or was it fake?
I was barely born, so I couldn't have gone yet.
That's a good question for another show, sir.
That is a good question.
Hey, you call back in next time. We'll talk about that.
Throwing that in there. I like it.
All right.
Next time, it's tomorrow. And you're just in Houston. You're afraid when you go out of your house, somebody's going to say, hey, This is a rocket space town, you guys.
Hey, there's a lot of weird things in the world, and I'm open to talking about them. But let's go to our next caller. Thank you for the call.
He does have a point. We are in Space City, so we can neither confirm nor deny the moon landing because we are Houston. We are the problem.
So that is a good concept. Take care, guys.
All right, hey, you there?
I'm still here, so.
Is it me?
Yes.
Hey, I know something that happened this week and has to do with drugs, and y'all didn't mention it. It's about all of these companies that Maxine Waters once said was pumping these drugs into these small neighborhoods, but nobody would listen to her. Now, it has been news this week that they've been doing these different companies. What do you have to say about that?
Companies pumping, putting drugs into the streets?
Getting all of these barbiturates into these small neighborhoods, like pills and.
I think it's the same, another coming of the same old problem because wasn't it Crack in America, CIA bringing that stuff in?
Yeah, but y'all didn't mention it. I was waiting for y'all to say something about it. I know you can't mention everything, but this is big news to me because I was raised in a small neighborhood. We knew damn well nobody in that neighborhood in Baytown could be bringing these drugs in, but the federal government or something thereof, because nobody had any airplanes, nobody had any big trucks, but it was an abundance of drugs that were coming into that neighborhood, and it was so blatant. Everybody knew that these big truckers and these whatever officials were bringing these drugs into the neighborhood. And Maxine Waters tried to say this umpteen years ago, but nobody would listen.
Huh. Yeah, and a lot of these companies, these pharmaceutical companies, some of them are actually, being exposed, and some people are going to prison and being fined hefty amounts of money. Hopefully we'll see more to come, though, because the opioid crisis is being exposed, and we're finding out that these companies were working with doctors to straight push it on people. And thank you so much for making the time to call in and to share that story. You're right, it is important. We don't have time to get to everything, but we do appreciate the reminder.
I want to take a moment to thank all the callers because all these issues and the way they feel about them are important. And at a time we live where Google, Facebook, Twitter, all these things are controlling voices and eliminating. I've got one here where more channels are being removed from YouTube. I'm not going to get into that story today because we can't. Here at KPFT, we truly are listener-supported radio. Your ideas are valued. It doesn't mean me and Derrick necessarily agree with either of you. Or any of y'all or ourselves. We've had this show going on for 10 years almost now, and I've been on different networks, and we're really glad to be here on KPFT. So given the climate that we're in a climate where the country seems so divided and so few people have patience for other people's opinions or the gumption to stand up and articulate a clear opinion in an attempt to make the world better and more rational. These things are in small supply. So to me, and the way I see it, is this tower of power here at KPFT is a tower that gets all these ideas out, not just here in Houston, but in Galveston, up in Livingston, all this on the FM band and worldwide.
The people who watch the archives on YouTube afterwards, who are located all over the country.
Yeah, if you want to call in, please do. And if you want to support the station, that means the world because we want the station supported. We want them to know that Freethinker Radio is what helped to support in these ways. So if you value this message, if you value what we're doing here, please, show that appreciation to the station as you can. And of course, follow us on every social media on earth.
Exactly. Because just a reminder, this is commercial-free, corporate-free community radio. And again, I guarantee you're not going to hear anything else like this on the FM dial. Definitely not in Houston. I can guarantee you that.
And thank you for listening. We won't go too far on that, but we got to deliver the message.
I think we got another caller on the line. What's going on?
Hi, caller. Hey, caller.
Hello.
How's it going today?
Oh, man, it's beautiful out there. It's summertime.
Nice. We're down to the last few minutes, so let's get into something. Why are you calling today?
Okay. Well, you were talking about vaccines, measles, or you want Facebook? You mentioned.
Let's go to vaccines.
Yeah, all callers have been on vaccines, so let's follow suit.
My uncle in the '60s, Uncle Art, used telling me about No, not. He told me when I was in the 60s, but in the 60s they would have measles parties. And, they're whatever. I know it sounds silly, but anyway.
No, I've read about that in books that I read in school, like the Great Brain books.
I heard about it in the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, I mean, so it is a cultural event.
So someone would have it, and the parents would go and they'll have like a sleepover, and the kids will acquire it, but it wasn't death. It wasn't like you're going to die. It was just basically you do your own little. The vaccine that they did their own was you acquire it and then you basically go through it. But the mandate now seems rather stifling, and y'all had information on the former director of the CDC mentioning that the alloys and the mercuries and the not lead, but the metals are not necessary, and you have 60-some more chemicals in what would be just 2 or 3 in the 70s. So why is there such a big fight against it now? That should be the question. Why are nurses campaigning or losing their jobs for not, issuing vaccines? Questions like this, no?
Yeah, these I think are interesting, important questions that people want to get to, and this is why we were calling out to those who are listening and who use that term anti-vaxxer to try to get more clarity. We're gonna have to leave it right there, though, brother, just for today.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
You too. Thank you so much for calling in.
I think we got another person on the line. Who do we got with us?
James.
Hey, what's on your mind?
Hey, just one quick thing. I believe that the situation with the drug companies and vaccinations, and stuff like that, it's a matter of choice. I think we all know what's good for us, but we still have that God-given right to choose, and under the Constitution, we have the freedom. But we're at a place in America now where we have to choose liberty or freedom.
Yeah.
We have liberty to do whatever's in the box, but freedom is the freedom to do whatever's outside the box. I'll take freedom.
Me too. Sign me up for freedom. Where is that?
Hey, thank you, sir, for that call.
Yeah,
we really
definitely.
appreciate that. Like you said, God-given and constitutional given.
Constitutionally supported.
Support constitutionally, it's
codified.
Codified, exactly. So we appreciate that. Thank you for calling in. All right. Well, I think that's probably our last caller, unless you got something real quick, like 30 seconds.
Tossing drugs in toilet could lead to meth gators.
713-526-5738.
Have you seen a meth gator?
I have heard of this meth gator thing. One thing I'll throw out, guys, just a couple of months ago, just a month ago, June, a few weeks back, the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, released a new trove of documents that show that the NSA has still been collecting millions of people's private phone calls and texts since about 2015, after they claimed they stopped with the USA Freedom Act or whatever. So ACLU discovers more evidence, government spying on all your stuff. Just in case that surprised anybody at all in 2019.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. What do? Do you just add a lot of extra fake information to send it? They don't like anything. All these posts we make, they never like it. They don't even hate it.
The NSA's never liking my stuff. I think some people resign themselves to just accepting this as a reality. I don't want to just resign myself to that. I do think that there are some tools and steps we can take. Maybe we'll cover that on a future episode. There are definitely, encrypted emails. A lot of it, I think, is just going to slow things down. We have to assume that at the far advanced level of military intelligence and government intelligence, the NSA, quantum computing, things like that, that probably all we can do is put up roadblocks or misdirections to protect our stuff, just in the name of privacy. Because it doesn't matter if you're doing anything wrong. If you're don't have, your freedom to have your own private thoughts, you're not free.
No doubt. We're winding up today's show. I did want to close or at least mention this event because I don't think I mentioned it earlier. Adventures in Herpetology is opening a reception for Joe Furman at the G-Spot Gallery. This guy is an award-winning documentarian on cave exploration right here in Texas, has worked with Houston Zoo, Carnegie Museum, and much more. Just want to get the word out about that. That's at G-Spot, kicking off tomorrow at 6 p.m., 310 East 9th Street.
And if you want to volunteer to clean up the Buffalo Bayou, 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. Meet at the Wortham Visitor Center. All right, guys, thank you so much. Till next week. This has been Free Thinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free. Enjoy this.
See ya.
It's just what you've been. Three sad facts. All over the world.